Welcome, everyone. Okay, got it. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Um, we are really excited about this workshop because this was actually presented to us by one of your fellow Blue Jays, who is excited to provide some help and resources to get you started on building your study plan. You can feel free to put questions in the chat and we'll answer questions at the end. And we'll also provide you with a link to a very brief survey at the end so that we can have your feedback on workshop and also hear from you about what you would like to see from the pre-professional advising office. So with that said, I'm Cynthia. I'll let you go ahead and take over.
Yeah, so thank you for the great introduction, Davina. So a little context about myself. My name is Cynthia Wang. I recently graduated from Hopkins with a degree in public health, and I took my MCAT January, so pretty recent. And through this workshop, my main goal was to kind of help you guys start building a study plan and also talk through the available resources that are out there, I'm sure, with however much things you've been looking at. It is a lot and it's very overwhelming, especially starting this 7-hour examination. So my goal really is just to give you a lot of the background information and kind of see what next steps are there for you to take to help you walk through the MCAT journey. So, a little bit of a disclaimer first is that this presentation is obviously no means comprehensive. There are a lot of different things that you can use for MCAT purposes and just a lot of information out there, but I try to condense it to the best of my abilities. So if I miss anything, feel free to reach out, and with any questions, I'd love to be able to help further. But additionally, I don't know if you guys know, but AMC actually has this outline. I think it's like 100 something pages that goes through all of the different topics that are testable. And personally, I recommend you to kind of look through it, really breeze through it at least, to give you a good understanding of what kind of things are being tested, what are things that you should be looking at. And it is just really comprehensive, especially since this is from the test makers themselves. And again, all of these things that I've used are from my personal experiences and experiences I've had and talks I've had with friends. So it's more of a personal in look, and it's not very comprehensive in that sense. So a little bit of an outline of what I wanted to cover today. So first, we'll be looking into some background on what the MCAT is, then going over content review, how to do content review, and then finally into questions and practice and building a study plan. And then I also included a little bit of tips at the end. And then any questions you guys can definitely throw in the chat and we'll go over them at the end of this presentation. So a little bit of background for those who might not be as aware of how the MCAT itself is structured. So you have a total of 4 sections, and total test time is about 6 hours and I think 15 minutes. But the first section is what we call CP, Chemical and Physical Foundations of Biological Systems. So topics covered in this would be like chemistry, orgo, physics, and you have 95 minutes to finish 59 questions. And then you basically have a 10-minute break. Following that, you have CAR session, which is on your reading comprehension skills. And for here, you have 90 minutes to complete 53 questions, and they're broken down into 9 individual passages, ranging from 5 to 7 questions. After you finish those 2 sections, you actually have a 30-minute break. Usually this will be included as your lunch break, and you get to kind of tailor if you want to take the full 30 minutes or if you take a little bit shorter. After lunch, you usually continue into the BB section, which is biological and biochemistry section. A lot of here things are like biology, microbiology, molecular biology, and biochemistry. And it is another 59 questions for 95 minutes. Following that, we have our last 10-minute optional break, and then we go into the PS section, which is psychology and sociology. And here is just mostly psych and social concepts for 95 minutes with 59 questions. So in total, if you were to take all of your breaks and to take all of the testing time, which you don't have to take the full 95 minutes or 90 minutes, that works out to be a 7-hour exam. So it is also a very big endurance game in finishing the exam. And each section is scored out of 132 points, and the total exam is out of 528 points, with the range from 472 to 528. So there's also two different question types that you'll encounter on exam day. You have those that are discrete questions. So those are based solely on kind of your own background knowledge. And the questions are all separate from each other. They do not reference a passage, do not reference each other. They're just asking questions, for example, like maybe what is the hybridization of this compound? Like very separate and distinct questions. Those are on the lower end. Usually per section, you're only going to see around 10 to 12 questions. The bulk of the questions on the MCAT are passage-based, and this really goes into data interpretation and data analysis skills. So you're presented with one passage. Most of it is from actually real research articles, and then the AMC makes questions based on those. Sometimes the questions and the answers, you don't really need to refer back to the passage, but sometimes they're also found within the passage. So for example, some questions might be like, what are the main results from this study? What are new pathways that the researcher can take to go over, right? So there's two different of those questions. Here are some kind of recommended background classes that I think are really essential for the MCAT. And additionally, these are more of my own personal take. And as a public health major, I did not have as extensive of a biology background. So you can definitely do very well on the MCAT without having to take a lot of the more molecular cellular biology classes. But some classes that I think are really critical would be organic chemistry 1 and 2, biochemistry, physics 1 and 2. Again, physics, if you've had AP physics and you jump into physics 2, I think that is 100% fine. And then I go into the highly recommended. I think intro chem 1 and 2 are also really nice. Organic chemistry lab, bio 1 and 2. And the last section I go over are the useful classes that I've had friends tell me that have been really, really helpful within their MCAT studying journey. So those things such as like cell bio, mobile, intro to psych. A lot of people do self-study for psych, so that is not essential. I also self-studied for psych, and I did not take psych or soc. And then some more niche classes. So a lot of the neuro classes, upper levels for the brain structures, those are really helpful, along with even for my public health classes, our research methods class, because there are a lot of questions on how to do study design. So that class was super helpful. But these are just some of the background classes that I thought were really helpful within my MCAT journey. So moving on to the next section of content review. So for me, you probably heard of things like, oh, there are high yield topics on the MCAT, like the amino acids, and then there are low yield topics like glycolysis or gluconeogenesis. But personally, I think that there's no such thing as a low yield topic on the MCAT exam. If it's within the MCAT outline given you by the AMC, it is testable, right? So if you assume something to be low yield, but actually shows up on your exam, it turns into a high yield topic. So content review, I think, is very important because there's only so much you can learn from just studying questions, right? Because if you look at the question, you don't understand it, you realize, oh wait, I need to look at this topic more, right? But then you're also missing out on some other topics. So it's important that you get a very comprehensive comprehensive outlook into how you do your content review. So first thing with content review is the prep books, right? So there's a lot of different writers for prep books. There's Kaplan, there's Points of Review, there's Exam Crackers. To be honest, I don't personally think there's too many differences between the two. I think the most important is that you're reading these books and going through them, whether quickly or slowly, to just understand what you need to review and what you don't need to review, right? So there's many options. You can buy hardcovers for Kaplan at least, and even for all the other ones, there are many ways you can buy. You can buy from JHU free or for sale. There's a lot of people that do resell their books for a lot cheaper. We're also off of eBay. As long as usually after 2018, there hasn't been many changes really with each edition. There's no point from like a money saving point of view to always get the new books as long as you're able to get them relatively recently. And then also for Kaplan, if you really don't want the hard copy, there's even the digital copy, I think from like 2023 on LibGen, that is super helpful. So again, there's a lot of different ways you can do content review through prep books, but any of them are really fine. For Psych and Soc, I know a lot of people actually use, there's a 300-word page document from Khan Academy, and that is basically, I think a Reddit user basically went through all the Khan Academy MCAT videos and made this comprehensive document that I think is pretty comprehensive. But again, you can also use the prep books to supplement whatever you don't find in that huge document. For Anki, that is also a very popular method of studying that is basically, for those that don't know, is this flashcard program. And how it is different from things like Quizlet is that there's is space repetition. So for example, when you encounter cards, you can either choose to review it in a few seconds, a few minutes, a few hours, or a few days based on how your confidence is. You're also able to group different cards together and then also select how many cards you want to learn per day. And the next day, you will have cards that are new and also cards that review mixed in together. There are also many options such as fill in the blank. So within a sentence, if you make a card, you can actually fill in different parts you want to like recall. So it's not just a front and back flashcards. There's even ability to, for example, if you want to memorize the diagram of the eye, you put a picture of the eye, you cover up different parts of that photo, and you're able to use that as a flashcards. There's also a lot of different pre-made sets, and you can make your own sets. So a lot of popular sets that are out there are, you can also find a way to download all these sets, probably on Reddit. They probably have those uploaded, is Miles Now, which is the really popular one, but MD Onking is the updated version because there's some issues and some errors within Miles Now. There's also Mr. Panko's, which is for Psych Soc only. I personally prefer that one over the Miles Now because the Miles Now, although it was great for initial review, it wasn't very comprehensive. And then finally, there's the Jack Sparrow. And because I had a weaker bio background, I actually went through the entire section of Jack Sparrow for biology because I just needed more really knowledge on like transcription and translation and those things. And those are very, very detailed. So again, Anki sometimes gets a bit repetitive, but it is a helpful resources for your initial content review. Some other resources that I've linked out there is Khan Academy has a lot of videos, and they're actually structured based on AMC guidelines because of the fact that there's a collaboration between AMC and Khan Academy. Jack Weston is another free resource, and they have their own entire outline, which is structured based on AMC guidelines, and I've put the link there. It basically takes you through a quick summary of each topic. YouTube is also a great resource. For example, if you're reading through one of your Kaplan book chapters and you get a little bit confused, it really helps with like niche videos like physics, really understand the basics. Again, additionally, Ninja Nerd was super helpful for me for molecular biology. Again, he is doing it more at a level of like med school, so for like step 1 exams. So it's a lot more detailed than necessary, but it is very comprehensive in a great way. If you're a podcast lover, I drove around a lot, and also during my workouts, I would listen to like there's different podcasts by Jack Weston and also at Med School Coach called MCAT Basics. And I usually just like play the video on like 2 times speed and I just listen to it while I drive or something like that. Additionally, we go on to our favorite topic of cars. I think personally, cars is one of those really challenging topics to really increase in your score on and really develop because it is not based on content. It's more on strategy based and really reading comprehension. And those skills are not something that you can just cram in a month of time. Unless you're really just really strong gifted reader, which unfortunately I was not. I think there is a need for continuous practice. So even if you're looking at a study plan for, I don't know, 6 months, or if you're shorter on 2 to 3 months, it is important that you do at least a passage or two per day, because at the end of the day, you really need to get your reading speed up. Because if you think about it, if you have 90 minutes to do 9 passages, that only works out to be 10 minutes per passage. And usually you want to get that time down to around 7 to 8 minutes because you want to give yourself a little bit more time for a passage that might be really challenging, right? So starting your day off with just a passage or two per day, really getting in what type of questions does the AMC like to ask, and how should I read? What should I be looking for when I'm reading? Is really critical. Obviously, the best practice is AMC material because those are from the test makers. But if you really just need additional reading practice, which I did a lot, was Jack Weston's Cars passages. These are free, but given there is the disclaimer that some logic is not the best, right? But it's really great just for you to get in some daily practice, do some more readings, and get into practicing cars. And then there's other third-party resources like Khan Academy, ViewWorld, but again, you can take it with a grain of salt because the logic might not be the best, but it is a great way to practice reading. Initially, I like to talk a little bit about why test cars, because initially when I saw the MCAT, I'm like, why do you need to test my reading comprehension skills? Like, there's already 3 other sections. Why do I need to do more, right? And the thing with cars is that all the answers from the past for the questions are actually found within the passage, right? And as future physicians, it is important for you to be able to read the passage and try not to assert so much of your own opinions in the passage, but really understand what what the writer is trying to interpret and try to tell you, right? And how can you interpret these new situations based on the information you're given? And also what is not given to you, right? So how do you extrapolate from that information to get something new out? And that's really why CARS is within the MCAT. Let's now go on to the section of questions and practice. So after we finish content review, right? Practice is very important because it really tests, did you understand what you were reading? I'm sure you have gone through lectures sometimes and you go through a lecture, you're like, I'm fully confident in what the professor was saying. And then you go on to do the homework and you're like, what are they talking about, right? That is similar logic to why we need to do practice. As much as content review is important, the more important part is also going through questions and understanding what you don't understand and how you can improve. So the best practice is really the material by AMC, as they're the ones that wrote the exam themselves. So if you spend any money on MCAT prep, invest in the AMC bundle. And here I'm going again into kind of why we're practicing, right? Because AMC is not also testing your ability to memorize information. It's more your ability to apply the knowledge you have acquired into new situations. So for example, an example I gave here is about psych soc, right? If they test you on different sociological concepts. They give you and ask you to apply that to a new situation. It's not enough just for you to memorize these definitions, right? Like, a macro sociological concept is functionalism. It's not just that. It's about how do I differentiate between like social constructionism and symbolic interactionism. Like, what are truly the differences and apply to new situations? And practice will really help you hone in on those skills. So practice with third-party materials. So this is a great way to kind of assess knowledge gaps and see where information and content gaps that you have lacked. My most recommended, and you probably have heard of it, is UWorld. It is pretty expensive, but I personally think it is the most like AMC materials that you can probably have. And some of it is actually, some of it's actually harder than AMC materials. And there's obviously pros and cons to this, but you are able to kind of mix and match sections as well for you can just select both orgo, physics, and chemistry and be able to kind of get that way. I also listed the price. So 90-day subscription, which works out to be 3 months, is $319 versus 6 months, which is $369. So actually what I did to save like a little bit of money was I had a friend that was taking the exam in August and then I was taking the exam in January. So she bought the subscription at like the end of May, beginning of June, and we basically just split a 6-month subscription, which is significantly cheaper because you do have a free one-time reset, which just means you reset the entire block of questions. If you're looking for free passages for all sections and different practice materials, those are Jack Weston and Khan Academy. I haven't practiced much with Khan Academy as much as Jack Weston, but I personally think UWorld is really a great way to really boost your score if you're really looking for a score of 520 and above. Additionally, more third-party practice materials is for Blueprint. I took a primary diagnostic, which I really recommend you take a diagnostic test just to see where you are at and where you need to go. There's a free one exam. They have more practice exams, but I heard that they do progressively get more obscure and more difficult as the time goes, as you progress from like exam 1 to exam 5. So it depends if you really wanted to do more third-party practice. There's also LTS, which offered, I remember when I got it, there were like free 5 full-length exams. I did maybe 2 or 3 of them and I stopped because I just thought they weren't the best. And then there's also Princeton Review and Kaplan both have free practice exams if that is something you choose to do. So a word of caution about third-party practice materials is their scoring. Their scoring is very deflated. So you might be actually scoring a 515 on the actual AMC exams, but they may only give you a score of 510. Additionally, some of their logic and reasoning are they just don't really make sense. Sometimes the questions they ask are too easy, or on the other side, they're too detailed, and they test for really minute details and not really application, which is what AMC is more testing for. But if you really want to kind of build up stamina for a 7-hour exam and also identify knowledge gaps, those are a great way. But like I tell the students I tutor is it is not effective for you to study for a week and then take the practice exam every single weekend, because if you think about it, you're wasting time. You're wasting 7 hours every day on doing an exam that might not be 100% useful for you in the long run. Plus, you also have to take the time to review those questions, right? So it really just depends on yourself. Is it worth taking those third-party full-length materials? Depending on how much time you obviously have. Now we work our way to the AMC material, which I call the holy grail, and something that you really, really need to get because it is the best way to prepare, especially as you near the end of your preparation process, because it is from the test makers themselves. So the entire bundle is $266. This includes 4 full lengths. People rank them based on difficulty on various orders. So it really just depends. And then you also have section banks. So the section banks has 300 questions from those 3 sections that I listed, which I think are super helpful. And then you also have CARS questions packs 1 and 2, which are 120 questions each. This is really, really critical. CARS, I think, is something that you just need to go through and really be able to see, okay, these are the logics that AMC has, and here's how I should approach these passages. I think it's even useful for me, like I did the question packs twice through, just to get the most practice I could. And then we have the independent question packs, which are 150 questions. So those are kind of what we call the discrete questions. And then the official online question packs, which are just 120 questions, which are also super, super helpful. So the last things that I put in there that are the things that are in the bundle, but not really useful from question difficulty slash type, but more for content review, is the physics, chem, and biology question packs. And why I listed it there is that in 2015, I believe, the AMC went through entire redo of the MCAT. So they rewrote their MCAT structures. And these question packs were actually from the previous administration. So they're not really reflective of how they like to ask questions now. But then again, it is something that you can use to identify any content gaps that you do have. Another really important tip is anytime you take entire full-length exam, it is very important for you to go through the exam slowly and even review questions that you may have gotten right, because there's been many situations where reading through the explanations, I realized that, oh, wait, I need to review this topic a little bit more. I'm not 100% confident. Or even if it's a question that you narrowed your answer down to 2 answers and you happen to pick the correct one, right? You might not be 100% sure that you were going to pick the same answer the next time you do it. And by reviewing slowly, you're able to really get in everything into your system and be able to understand that I can pick 100% the correct answer for my next go around. So it's definitely really recommended that you actually go through the entire full length really slowly. Some people do say if you take 7 hours to do exams, it should take you 7 hours to go through, or even double the time to be able to go through the exam. So practice questions and full lengths. Again, doing questions is not enough. Part of the learning process is also reviewing, and that can take many formats, right? So if you have a topic you don't really understand, it can be watching the videos on how to really hone in on those skills and be able to increase your confidence. It can also be making flashcards. So sometimes what I did was for questions that I got wrong was I typed in what I thought were the main points of that question, and I made flashcards so I can review and really make sure I don't make the same mistakes. Also, identify the reason why you picked the answer, like guessing or truly you did not understand. And also identify the reason why you got the answer wrong. Was it because you didn't read the question correctly, or you just need to review the topics, right? Again, you can even make a tractor on the topics that you messed up and thoroughly read the explanations provided to see perhaps there's the connection base, right? So is it because I don't understand how to read a passage correctly, or is it because I can't really see the connections it's making with jumps from other topics and other content areas? Another great way for review I really enjoyed was actually Jack Weston, because it has an extension on Google Chrome where it offers more comprehensive and detailed responses on and also explanations on AMC practice materials and questions. And this was super helpful for me, especially when I didn't really understand what AMC was trying to get, because some of their questions and explanations are just one sentence and I did not fully understand. I was like, can I see the math of how to do this question, right? Additionally, you're even able to, what I did for some of my full lengths was you're able to hide the correct answer. So sometimes I would, for review, I would just go through the passage and hide the correct answers and just pick an answer again. And by picking that answer, you can even see what you picked the first time, right? So this really dives into, did I make the same mistake the second go around? And did I also pick the right answer this time? For the things that didn't really work out with Jack Wesson, I also searched up Reddit, like, full length for question this from this section, right? There are many answers that are available. Some of them are super helpful. Again, remember to double check these because they're just from students, and sometimes we also make mistakes, right? So there might also be some misleading information. So try to take those with also a grain of salt. Additionally, I also linked a MCAT explanations document. This is a pretty comprehensive document, I think, of mostly all the full-length questions and some additional explanations that people have written. There's Here's an example that I actually linked for a way you can create a tracker for yourself for reviewing questions, right? So the first column is kind of like what section it is, what question it is, and then you make a key of why did you get the question wrong, what kind of question it was, what kind of concepts was it testing, go through why did you get it wrong, what was the solution, and what did you take away, right? And that this is a little bit time consuming. So I did it initially a little bit, but then later on I ended up not doing. So it really depends on you. If this is helpful, do it. If it's not, there's also different ways to review the exam. Let's now go on to building a study plan. So here's an important thing that I like to do. I'm sure, at least for me, I had a huge loophole that I jumped into, which was Reddit and YouTube, of watching all of these things and posts about how to get a 520 plus in X amount of months. Yes, these are important things. Like coming to this workshop is important for you to know what resources are out there and how to really use the best resources to prepare. But at the end of the day, watching all these videos for hours or reading all these posts are not going to help you study at all. It's not going to really help you gather all the information that you need to do to do your best on these exams, right? So as much as you're looking through these, after you get an initial overview, it's just time to dive in and really try to start working hard towards your goal. So here's a sample timeline of how I like to work through things with my tutoring and how I like to work with students that I tutor. Is if we have, let's say 3 months or 2 to 3 months, this is more for maybe like a 2 to 3 months, is the first month is really just dedicated content review. Is take your diagnostic, see what you need to improve on, see where your weak points are, and then really set a schedule for yourself to get through content books, to get through content videos, and to look through the AMC outline, right? Try some different active recall techniques. If Anki works, Anki works. If Anki doesn't work, maybe physical flashcards, right? So really get a view into how you can do your bulk of your content review. After you build that strong foundation, then move on, if you have a month, into third-party practice and continued content review. And this is the part where you start doing practice questions, going back to skills that you feel like you're weak on, review those weak content areas, and make up for any material you thought you missed on, and also adjust the studying as needed. And then the last month, usually I think it takes about a month for you to really go through the entire AMC of those content, right? So really focus your attention on the AMC materials to make sure you get the best test taking strategies, understand the logic, understand the errors, and usually there's, I think, 4 to 5 full lengths from the AMC. And so that means you should be giving yourself around 4 to 5 weeks to be able to get through that, right? If you do a full length a week and allow for yourself to have a little room for growth, so you're not just taking full length after full length after full length. Again, one thing I really do stress is the importance of continued content review, right? Because doing questions is not enough. If they only test certain topics, it doesn't mean that these topics will always come up on your actual exam. So you need to make sure you're even looking at topics that are not being tested within this material. So that is the importance of content review. And let's say if you're shortening this into a 2 month span, right? And you're taking, let's say now it's June, you're taking the exam in August and you only have 2 months to study, then I would say you can combine content review and third-party practice, right? Do a little bit, try to finish content review as fast as possible, and then supplement that with third-party practice and make sure you have kind of an entire month to do your content review. And for myself at least, so I decided to take the exam in June, right? So I'm not June, my apologies. I decided to take the exam in January. So, and I started around late July, August-ish. August was kind of like studying, but I try to finish kind of content review in a month-ish. And then from September to November, I just did UWorld every day. So I do like 50-ish questions per day if I didn't have exams, and then I review those. And then December was just for finals. After December, after finals, basically, I spent an entire month of really dedicated studying. And when I say dedicated studying, that goes to about like 10 hours of studying per day. And that was just really drilling in all the content that I needed to memorize and really just all of the AMC material. So it really depends on your timeline. So with that, I think that you can look into other people's study plans, but that might not work the best for me. Like personally, some people really like having daily tasks. I need to do the same thing every single day. For me, I like to be more flexible. So I like to set a month goal. That is, what do I want to get this done this month, right? That might be finish all my content books. Then I say this week, what do I want to do this week? I want to finish chapters 3 to 6 for all my content books. And then lastly, daily, right? What is today's goal? I think that breaks it down into more manageable steps and have you have more flexibility in your study. So you're not just doing the same thing over and over and over again. Additionally, overestimate how much time you will take, right? Say maybe you think that if you really cram, you can finish in 2 weeks. Then say maybe let's do 3 weeks, because then you feel better about yourself if you fall off a few days, right? Give you ample time to be flexible, and also in case some topics are more challenging than others, maybe it gives you more time to do it. And also realize that it's okay that you don't hit your daily goals, right? The most important thing is that you're coming back, you take those rest days when those are needed, and you come back every week and also every day to be able to do just a little bit of content. If I was feeling really tired, if I had a lot of exams, it might just be in the view of I do 1 to 2 course passages today, and that's my MCAT prep for today, right? It doesn't have to be so that you study 10 hours per day. Additionally, I think, for example, like here, you can plan out your week, right? So this goes through kind of a sample of Monday through Sunday through Saturday, right? And you have a dedicated rest day. Again, I highlight that cards should be a kind of a daily constant task to really up those reading skills. And lastly, it's also really important for you as you see that you don't do like chemistry just for 1 week and then biology the next week, right? You want to alternate between different topics, because if you do that, if you just do chem for 1 week, the next week you just only do bio, you're gonna forget a lot of the content. It's better for you to alternate between the days. Like even on my last days of studying, I would just go through different practice questions. So I go from chem, then to bio, then to psych, then to soc, right? Doing a mixture of things throughout my day. So I'm not just fundamentally just doing one topic for an entire week. Additionally, pre-professional advising is really happy to help facilitate you as you move through your MCAT journey. And also they actually have a really great resource, which is actually a survey from a lot of other Hopkins students based on what kind of resource they use, how long they study for. And this is actually a really comprehensive guide and more opinions than I can offer that you can definitely look at later on. So also some additional tips is that remember that the MCAT is not a marathon, but is, sorry, the MCAT is a marathon and not an actual sprint. So scores can really fluctuate based on the exam. It can vary very widely, because for example, if an exam is scored nicely, you might only get like 5 questions wrong and you get this really high score. But the next exam, you still get 5 questions wrong, but it becomes a lower score. So aim to really not get the same types of questions and the same types of topics wrong. And then aim to also decrease the number of questions wrong, because fundamentally, the less number of questions you get wrong, the more likely you're able to get a higher score. And additionally, MCAT is only one component of your entire application, right? So if standardized testing is a weakness, just aim to start earlier, try your best to get to your goal, but you can also supplement a lot of this test scores with other aspects, right? Because really they just want to see, can you meet the rigorous medical education that we have. It is not just about that one score. It's going to tell you you're going to enter med school or you're not going to get med school. And also everyone is really rooting for you and believe in you. So if you put in the work, I believe that you can definitely do it. So with that, we have a quick kind of survey, if you guys could do it. Basically tells us how you thought of this session, what other different sessions that you would like to see in the future. There's also so much more information that we can definitely get into, and we'll definitely send this now probably into the chat, and as well as when we will publish this PowerPoint to you guys. So you can definitely click on there. And this is just super helpful for us to see what other sessions we can definitely plan, such as like going through practice exams, like how to do that. Or it can also be things like where do I start with AMC practice materials, what to expect on test days, etc., etc. So that is mostly all from me. So the survey link is sent in the chat, and I will be happy. We basically have about like 20-ish minutes for questions. If anyone has any questions, I'd love to be able to answer. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I do have some questions in the chat that we can start off with. So if other people want to put questions in the chat, we can do that. We can also send, you can unmute yourself. I think the group is small enough to do so. It did say, do you recommend taking breaks during the exam?
Yeah, so I highly recommend taking breaks during the exam because it gives you a time to like stretch your legs, to get some water, walk around, really kind of, let's say a section didn't go as well as you planned, for you to kind of regroup yourself, rechange your mindset. I don't think there is a rush for you to get out of the room, right? You're already there for like, even if you don't take breaks, you're gonna be in there for like 6-ish hours, right? So what's the harm of taking another quick little break? And 10 minutes really goes by really fast. So I definitely recommend you to actually take those breaks. And something I did, which I don't know if you really need to do, was like when before like my exam, when I was doing like my last few like full lengths, I would like eat the same breakfast and eat the same lunch that I did on the exam day to make sure like everything would go as smoothly and there'll be not many external factors impacting how well I perform. So, but yeah, I definitely do encourage you to take breaks.
Yeah, and I'd like to echo that, Cynthia, because in talking to a lot of people who've taken the MCAT before, sometimes you may get a section and you need to regroup afterwards, and giving yourself the opportunity to take a break, reset your mind, can really be helpful in just proceeding and moving forward. And I think you brought up a really great point too about eating the same breakfast. I've definitely heard people do that. They've also picked out what sweater they're going to wear, wearing a zip up as opposed to a pullover because they didn't want to have to deal with that, whether they were going to wear glasses or if they were going to wear contacts that day. So a lot of people do really think about not just the content and getting ready for the day, but what their strategy is going to be for their actual like person that day of as well.
Yeah, definitely.
That was a really good suggestion about the consistency in some of the non-studying tips. There was another question that said, "What resources do you recommend?" Oh, wait, Daniela, you can go ahead and ask your question because I can see your hand.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so my question for Cynthia, can you repeat like how far in advance you started studying for the MCAT before your actual like test? Because as a freshman, I don't know, obviously I think it's a little too early to start like explicit review. So I just want to know again how far in advance you started prepping.
Yeah, so a little bit background. So I put my test date as January. I started studying the August after my sophomore year. So I took it January of my junior year. So I graduated actually Hopkins in 3 years. So that's why I did it in my junior year. And the only class that I had not taken at that point was biochemistry. So I think how I viewed it is being a freshman, you should not be rushing. You don't have to rush to like all of a sudden study for the MCAT. I think as long as you're being consistent with your schoolwork and really understanding those concepts, it gives you a very solid foundation for when you actually do start studying. So it actually save you a lot of time in that road. So I think honestly, factoring out yourself, at least I knew I wanted a 6-month study timeline. I think some people take 2 to 3 months and they do absolutely fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Um,
And then I had some, okay, I guess we can go into the resource questions about
yeah.
anatomy and physiology. So I personally didn't take anatomy or physiology, so I really recommend Ninja Nerd, which I will type into the chat. Also is included on the PowerPoint. He goes through a lot of the organ systems. He goes through renal organisms, like all the different organ systems, and those were super, super helpful. They're very detailed. It gives you a really comprehensive understanding. And for some reason, I think I'm a more of a visual learner. So when I was reading it, I got a little bit confused. But when I watched his videos, those were super, super nice to just go through. I also got a direct message about purchasing UWorld if you've purchased other resources and other courses. I think it really just depends on your budget for how much you want to commit. I personally was a big fan of UWorld. You don't have to purchase it. I can't say like, oh, just because you don't have UWorld that you won't do well. I think as long as you're getting the content review, you're getting the practice, and you're doing the AMC practice, I think those are really critical. Some people do amazing even without UWorld. Um, Another question I got was that when I was doing content review for the exam, were there any concepts that I was unfamiliar with, specific questions about anatomy? I think most of it was covered in my biology class. I had Roberson for Gen Bio, so he didn't really cover as much about renal stuff. So I had to review a lot of those. With mobile, I never took mobile, so I had to review a lot about transcription, a lot about translation, operons, bacteria, those things. I just didn't seek. I also did not take psych or soc, so a lot of those psychology concepts. I did take AP psychology, but I barely remember anything, so I had to review a lot of that. And lastly was a lot of like different blots. So for example, lab techniques, those are also super, super popular. So I just watched some videos on those and did a lot of practice. I think it's really just deciphering all the experiments that I had to really work on for skills.
Cynthia, I think I just want to just address one of the questions that was asked in terms of retaking and retesting. I think that is more of a question to have with an advisor about what that means, because that's really relative to competitiveness and goals and things like that. So we're not going to really touch retaking here. We're going to concentrate on just being able to prepare well for the exam. So if you need to retake, I think that you should kind of take in any of the tips that maybe you had not considered before as a way to kind of revisit preparation for retaking it. But that's as far as we'll kind of use this session to address. There's another one that says, did you ever study with friends? If so, do you have any ideas of how to study in groups?
I personally did not study with friends because I get very distracted. I'm a bit of a yapper. So if I start studying with friends, I know it's not productive. But then again, I know some people really like studying with friends, just like lock in, make sure everyone's doing their review. If you have questions, ask each other. I just thought it was not productive based on like I only had really a month of really super dedicated study time. So that's why I did not study with friends. Although I did, like, for example, when we do questions, right? If I had a question, I would definitely text a friend, even talk to them about it, hop on a Zoom call if I was really confused, but I did not really study with friends. If it helps you from a productivity and ensuring that you are getting the things you need to be done, I encourage it. But I think with MCAT, I was just focused a lot more just on doing the questions, making sure I was in an environment that was quiet enough for me to be conductive with my studying.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will definitely say that group studying can be very efficient for helping exchange thought processes around maybe concept or questions that maybe you seem to get wrong, especially when you get into the error correction. Maybe there are ways helping hear how people have deduced or gotten to their answer can help you think differently when you see different types of questions. However, I will definitely encourage those who like to study in groups to really have dedicated individual study time, because the exam is very much individual. So you want to make sure that you feel confident in and trust your own like intellectual patterns in order to answer questions well. So build a balance, obviously, depending on where you are with preparing, but make sure you definitely don't utilize group studying, overuse it in a way where it can impact your confidence in doing it by yourself. So there was another question that said, is there a reason you recommend the Khan Academy 300 pages doc as opposed to videos?
I actually looked through both of them. I think both of them are fine. I just used it because it was easier for me to access. For example, like I didn't need the internet to access the videos or watch the videos. I think whatever works for you as long as you're getting in the content. I think either one is comprehensive because the 300-page doc is based on the videos. I just like reading through it like a textbook. That was all. And then some direct messages I got was, can you give an example of an outline for starting end of August exam if you're just starting now and with just JHU classes? And I would say like since we're looking at if end of August, that's about 3 months, right? So if you can try to finish content review as fast as possible, go through all of those books, then move on into third-party practice questions, and then just dedicate the last month to AMC. I think that is probably the best kind of simple outline I can give you, because more of the calendar based, like, oh, how many chapters I do per day, I think that's more dependent on you and how you feel like how much you can take on. So but definitely, if you want to talk later, you can definitely send me a private message as well. Another direct message I got was taking OrgoLab versus chirality for the MCAT. I don't think there's a big preference for either one. I think either one works. It depends on your time. It depends on your major. If you need it, either one. I had a fine time with just OrgoLab. Chirality, I think, is a little bit more intensive. So that if that's something you want, that is that. I see someone raise their hand. Do you want to? What question did you have?
Yeah, first, thank you so much for doing this. This is like really helpful, so I appreciate it. And my question was, could you go over again like when you suggest taking the practice full length? Because I know you mentioned to avoid like just taking a practice full length like every weekend after you're done, like after you do what you're doing during the week. So, when do you suggest kind of doing that?
Yeah, so the AMC has, if you get the bundle, you have access to 5 exams, right? Usually, I think it's pretty worth your time if you take 1 exam per week. At least finish those, right? So that means you'll be taking that 5 weeks out from your actual exam. And I think that is probably what I would recommend. Then again, if you wanted to do more third-party practice, then you can see how you wanted to sprinkle them into your studying. But I think definitely at least give yourself 5 weeks before your test date to be able to start those practice exams.
Thank you.
Yep. Some other questions is difference, let me see. Making your own Anki cards versus using pre-made decks. I made some of my own Anki cards, but to be honest, I made it just because I find out like if I type things down, I memorize them better. I never looked at them again. For pre-made decks, I actually used them because I thought they were really well made, and if I could save time for making decks, why not use them? Why have to create my own, right? So I think it just depends on you. Some people are really adamant about making their own Anki cards because they feel like it speaks to them better, but I was fine with just pre-made decks. Difference between UWorld cards questions and AMC questions. I read on Reddit that UWorld cards questions were not the best, and then I did a few and I thought they were a little bit easier than AMC, so that's why I ended up not using them. I used Jack Weston instead. But if you just need more reading comprehension and reading practice, I don't think there's any problem with using UWorld. I just think if you're on the last few days or last few weeks of your study, you should just be using AMC questions to make sure that your logic is not warped by another third-party practice. Another direct message I got was, do you recommend reading Kaplan books all the way through? I personally went through the Kaplan books like 3 to 4 times. So I really did really like reading through all the Kaplan books. Just like to breeze through any topics that I thought I had weaker strength in, to review through everything. But then again, Kaplan books doesn't cover every single detail of the MCAT, and that is why I think it is also important to do practice. And through practice, you can kind of see, okay, what topics am I still weak on? Do I need to go through more? And do I need to watch more videos? What content areas am I the weakest on? Question about third-party practice exams. Do I think Kaplan's are the best? I don't really have a really strong answer for that, unfortunately, because of the fact that third parties are just so variable. I don't think there's anything that are the quote unquote the best. For practice exams, I don't know. I really just don't have a very clear-cut answer to that, unfortunately. And then, do I recommend taking a lot of notes during content review? I think it depends on the learner that you are. I found out that for me personally, taking notes didn't really, I didn't remember all of the content if I just took notes. But what I did instead was, I found out that if I read, for example, so I would read a chapter, right, of Kaplan, and then I say, okay, I have just one note sheet. And I'm gonna write all that I can remember on that one note sheet. And then I'm gonna go back and see what else do I still not remember. I think limiting yourself in just having one page per chapter, I think that is super, super nice and important. um of what can I like, it's basically like doing a brain dump, right? And then going back into the chapter and saying, okay, what else do I still need to review? Uh, I supplemented that with Anki because, for example, Jack Sparrow, he had a lot of all of these cards based on, I think he structured it based on the Kaplan books, and that really helped me solidify all of that information. And then one more is Kaplan has a lot of chapter practice problems. Do I recommend doing them? What do I think about spending time to do the online Kaplan chapter practice problems? I didn't really use the chapter practice problems, so I unfortunately cannot attest to how well they are. I did look through them, but I think they are just really questions on did you understand this chapter. So if you want to do it from a content review to make sure you actually understood what you read, I think it is nice. But if you think that they are representative of the AMC questions, I do not think they are representative of the AMC questions because they don't have any passages associated with it. And I know for a lot of people that I help with for the MCAT, they struggle the most on taking what they need from the passage and applying it to the questions. So there is a very important part of the MCAT is just making sure you're able to understand the passage themselves and apply it to the questions that you need to answer.
Okay. Do you have any more personal ones? We have some more here that said, would you recommend using, oh no, you did that one. Did you fully answer the where are you world cards questions different from double AMC in any way?
Yeah, I did. I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
you did that one. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I think, and then I heard you just answer that. I don't have any more questions on my end. I don't see any hands. If you probably have just about 5 minutes. Go ahead, Natalie.
Okay, I just wanted to recap because I was direct messaging you, but like just that for using Kaplan just for the content and the chapters themselves would be the best use of the Kaplan books is in your opinion. Is that kind of like what I can get from the three questions I asked?
Yeah. I think definitely. I think that's what I use it for. Sometimes I use the questions just to make sure did I actually understand what I read in the chapters. So I think mostly Kaplan I just use for content review. I didn't really use much of their end of the chapter questions if that's what you're asking.
Okay, and then follow-up question for that is like for content review, would you just say like to would like your definition of content review be like read all of the Kaplan books or is there like an like would you like I guess like explain your definition of content review because I know you use that term several times throughout the presentation.
Yeah, sorry. So content review, like how I like to define it, is just going through the Kaplan review books, whatever review books that you want to use, Kaplan, Princeton Review, Exam Crackers. Those are all great options. But that is how I define content review. Content review is just actually looking at content, reading through content, making sure you understand the concepts. That is what I define content review to be.
Okay, that's really helpful because I guess like when you take like classes, for example, it's like not always like you come out of it, you may have gotten a good grade in the class, but do you really remember like everything that you did there? Or you gotta like a brain dump every semester sometimes.
Right. And also for the exam, right? For example, for physics, you're not going to be tested on all the subjects. So for example, you're not going to be tested on all the electric field stuff. So you can actually look through and see what do they like to test. Like for example, they like to test circuits, they like to test this. So those topics are things you can focus on. And other things like, doing integrals, those are not the big things you need to focus on. So I think those content review books are also helpful in saying what kind of things should I be focusing on that might not be covered as extensively or maybe too much in detail in my classes.
Thank you.
And then I had, let's see, we do have 5 more minutes. I do have a few more questions. This one's more niche. This one's about using the notepad on test day. So I can quickly just go over that for people. You basically have a white notepad that you get for test day, and I just use that for doing that. I didn't really use it for other things. I know some people use that to like jot down all the concepts they want to brain dump, but I just use it for math topics. And then for additional questions that anyone might have, I'll put my email into the chat. And for any questions that you might want to reach out for and anything like that, feel free to do that as well. I also tutor for MCAT if that is something that you are interested in at all as well. So And additionally, if you guys could fill out that survey, that would be super helpful.
Yeah, I also put the link to the MCAT workshop links, so the different resources that were discussed, as well as the survey link is there as well in case you move here. So please do give us your feedback about that. Oh, Natalie, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, it's just one other, it's a different topic, I guess, but for the AAMC, I know you were saying like probably save like the 5 full-length exams, or it was a 4 or 5, like for like the last month of studying. But do you recommend doing any AAMC practice like towards the beginning, or like in like a 3 month kind of like setup, like doing AMC at all like towards the beginning, or just saving everything for the end?
A lot of people that I talk to, and I personally feel it's better to save it for the end, because in the beginning you want to make sure you have a really solid foundation before you tackle those questions, because after you look through those questions, they're not going to be the first time looking through them, right? I think it's better for you to have a really strong foundation and then look at those questions so you can get the most out of them.
Okay, and this is like not only the full practice exams, this is also like the questions themselves, like the question packs, right? Would you say?
Yeah, because
Okay.
like for the question packs, for at least personally, I think like the section banks, right? You only have around 300 questions. If you break that down, usually per section is like, if you do a section, it's like 60 questions. You can do that in 5 days. Like, it's not a lot of questions. The AMC doesn't give you a lot of questions. So if you started super early, you're gonna run out of questions to use, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's why you probably recommend doing third party practice like first, in order to kind of like feel like test the waters, right? And then like
Mhm.
really get into it right at the end.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
That
yeah.
makes more sense. Thank you.
And I think this will probably be the last question, but I got a question about one to take diagnostic tests, and then to do it after a content review, or do at the very beginning of studying. So what I personally did, and also what I kind of recommend, is to, if your test day is in August and you haven't taken a diagnostic, do a quick diagnostic. Like, it can just be the blueprint one. Obviously, take that score with a grain of salt. It's not going to be as high as you would probably like it to be, but it's a great way to say, how do I feel taking this 7-hour exam? What are areas that I know I'm consistently weak on? And it just gives you kind of a way to get into the MCAT mode, and even maybe like a little motivation in starting to study, right? I think that way is just a great way to jump right in. I wanted to feel a little bit better about myself, so I did some psych and social studying before I took my diagnostic, so I was not just like 100% out there, like not knowing anything about psych and social. So it really just depends on you, but I think the earlier you do it, the better you are kind of set up to really get into that studying space. Really prep yourself the best that you can to start studying. Just make sure that you do take that score with a grain of salt, as you will definitely improve.
Okay. Well, we really, really appreciate you, Cynthia, for putting this together. I am sure that those who have stayed and listened have gained great insight. So we hope that you've gotten all the resources and the Google Docs that we put in there, as well as the survey. Thank you all for attending and being attentive and asking great questions. Hope you all have a great night. Thank you, Cynthia, again.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming.
You can stop the recording, Cynthia. I think you have to. I think